This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
All right, we're back. This is Chris Saxman on the VIP Podcast. That's Virginia in Politics, but we also know it stands for very important people, don't we? And joining us today is another very important person on the VIP Podcast, General Bob Wood. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Great to have you in here today on the VIP Podcast, available to you on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. Please subscribe, like, and share. General Wood, tell me about this veterans group that you've put together over the last several years. It's called the American Veterans Vote.
It is.
Tell us about that.
Well, call me Bob, please.
Okay, that's not here. It's hard to do for civilians.
I have the same problem with sergeant majors. I always call them sergeant majors.
See, you defer to people you have great respect for and admiration, given their tenure and legacy and
thank you, Chris.
In service as an Army general.
Well, we started just real quickly. Daniel Gade served in a unit that I commanded in Korea. And when he ran for Senate, I had run a couple times in Alexandria for city council and enjoyed the experience. I did, actually. I found it very constructive, useful, and I thought it's something that any veteran would probably do because we're naturally problem solvers and there were things to be done. Daniel asked if I'd help him with the campaign. I said I'd love to, and immediately fell in with about 40 other veterans who had done kind of in the same way. I want to come and help support this man. We didn't win, but we did the whole retail politics thing. And we realized that this was something useful that we could do as a team. We liked each other's company. We said, let's stay in business. So we got incorporated and began to work as American Veterans Vote. Interesting name because most of the political professionals, we were just veterans trying to do our best job. For in this case, Daniel. Right. They said, well, veterans really don't vote. I mean, not as a block as such. We didn't like that, so we said American Veterans Vote.
So, and veterans really don't.
Well, they're not inclined. They're not inclined. I mean, when we're in the military, it's mission. That's what we woke.
Well, you're also non-political. You're not supposed to be involved in politics.
Amen. It's someone else's job on policy and politics both. But then you get out, you join your first company, and start a family, get finished up school, and you look around. There's things to get changed. You need to get changed through a variety of ways. You work in the community, or you could be part of politics, or you can grow your business and change it yourself.
And you start out in professionally in your career as a nonpartisan
completely
American.
Completely American, swore an oath to the Constitution, served to accomplish the mission. So you're not inclined when you get out, but suddenly you realize there's things to be done in your community. And you can do it in a whole host of ways. I happened to try and start this with the politics, but I met other people of similar minds who were veterans.
Right.
They said, well, what do we need to do? And we believe in change through the ballot box. And it was frankly in January when we formed the 2021, which is January 6th had just occurred.
And that was a motivating aspect for this organization.
It was in a way that we looked at our veteran friends or whoever were involved in what was really really quite an event, but we understood their frustration, but there's a constructive way to do it, and that's through the ballot box, organized politically.
So the leadership of this organization after January 6th said, this is not the right way to go about changing our country for the better. Is that fair?
That's fair. In fact, we created our code of conduct. We have a code of conduct that describes what it is we expect, what we do. And
let's talk about that because it came after January 6th, as you know. It was a very historic day in America.
Yeah. Well, and we weren't really focused.
Historic day.
We were focused on the frustration.
Sure. I get that.
And we got it too.
And you go, we're not doing this correct.
There's better ways to do it.
Better ways to do it.
And we fell through the ballot box, and we created a code of conduct which talks about the service. It talks about dignity and respect. It talks about respect for our constitutional republic, and frankly talks about not really damaging what veterans have fought for.
Because if that brand had been ascribed to veterans on January 6th, that's a really bad brand for veterans writ large.
Well, it absolutely is. It was, but again, it was understanding what frustration they were facing, those who were participating, and what other outlet did they have. There's an outlet through politics, organized with, there's 22 million veterans in the United States. There's about 760,000 in Virginia. And that doesn't count family members and beyond. So it's a powerful force who aren't inclined to be in the political space, not naturally, but in fact, with the power of their numbers, can change things at the margin. We're not trying to be another VSO, another Veterans Service Organization. Sure. They do their job terrifically. American Legion, variety, there's about 9 of them that are in the space. The VFW is another great entity. And we said, well, why don't we focus on what we're going to do? And that's take that experience first with what we did with Daniel Gade and say, let's broaden it. Let's not go away.
So after the January 6th, the organization formed, here's a candidate, Daniel Gade. Remarkable story, Daniel Gade. Significantly wounded in battle in Iraq. An amazing story to get behind. We want to get behind this as veterans supporting another veteran.
Right.
But your issues are really not so much tailored to veteran issues.
Well, we have three goals, Chris. 3 really strategic goals, and that's support veterans and their families. We start there.
Okay.
The second thing is defend the Constitution as written and amended. We all swore an oath to it. One thing that's common among all veterans, they swore
natural outgrowths of their
natural outgrowths. We all swore, an oath to that Constitution. And the third goal is to protect the nation at home and abroad. We did that in much of our service, but at home as well. Kind of rings true with the communities that we're in. So those 3 objectives are what motivate us: support veterans and their families, defend the Constitution as written and amended, and protect the nation at home and abroad. Those 3 goals, and the fact that what we're about is acting constructively with a code of conduct that describes our actions.
Right.
That's how you join. You sign a code of conduct to join.
No membership fee?
No membership fee. I mean,
you'll accept their donations, of course.
Yeah, we'll accept them.
To.
You don't have
Not
to.
a membership organization.
Per se in the way as a fee. Yeah. But yes, we'll come out and ask you when we need some help, but we don't start there. We start with the code of conduct. We start with our 3 goals. The objective is to get veterans involved in the political space in a constructive way, and we believe change happens through the ballot box. So our really motivating motto is every veteran, every vote, because the numbers are significant, particularly when you're bringing numbers to the margin of these very close elections we have in the state and in the nation. And so we're very data driven.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, there's data that's available through public sources that are in the voting files of what the State Board of Elections can provide, or the Federal Election Commission. And it describes kind of a voting pattern of those who choose to register and vote regularly, or maybe not. Maybe they're frustrated. Maybe they say, why vote? It is so fundamentally important for veterans. They fought for that right, or they served to protect that right.
That's what they swore an oath to.
And so it's naturally a subject they understand inherently. What we want to do is make them understand explicitly in their community what their choices are, who they can vote for, what their platforms are. And so, there's a lot of people that work in the space to bundle money. We bundle votes.
Okay.
We go after the veteran vote to say, listen, here's what is important in the upcoming elections. Here's whatever we can educate, whatever we can inform. And there is a moment in time when we've interviewed candidates, we say these are the candidates we think are strongly behind our 3 objectives. One thing that's interesting about the veteran population, the demographics, because we have the data, tell us they're about 55, 56 years old in Virginia.
Okay.
We know
it's an aging population.
It's an aging population.
I hate to say it because I'm 57, but go ahead. Sorry.
You're such a young man. But
haircut.
There you go. But the point is that it is a large population, as I mentioned the numbers, but it is an aging population. But by their very frankly nature, background, and just common experience, they understand the Constitution and what it means. They served for it on whatever far distant shore. They understand the life. I mean, veterans are a community that don't necessarily have the same experience, but started generally from the same ethos.
Right.
And so you can strike up a conversation.
Are they in communities themselves as veterans? Because we've become a very divided, disintegrated society.
You have the VFW and the American Legion. You have the clubs.
Does that go beyond that?
It does. It does in common experience. You can start a conversation and know immediately what their background is. Were you a veteran? And you go,
but
right.
They stay connected.
They stay connected.
My sense is no, long term. And those relationships
They
break
see
down.
themselves as husbands and wives and professional business and those sorts of things. But they do come back together when they talk about voting.
Okay.
Because
so this is a community building aspect to
it
to
is
the organization,
absolutely organic. It's organic, and that's why our member growth is so exciting, because
Right.
we
It's
tell
veterans together.
they're veterans coming together to do what, in this case, commonly they can do in the political space for candidates or for causes. We, of course, have the policies that kind of derive downstream from what I described as our goals. We also, though, have, after doing this for 3 years now, we decided to break into regional groups,
Okay.
because it's just a matter of being able to be a touch point locally. All politics is local, so let's bring the organization from, we Zoom call a lot. Thank God for Zoom. But that way we touch people all over the state, and we can immediately organize and activate around a cause, a candidate, a policy position, whatever it may be. And because we're working with a code of conduct that is easily understood by veterans, generally not overly political or against a candidate, but really functionally helping our country and our country stay together, get back together, and really go after things that are commonly, I think, common interest for veterans. Afghanistan was a heck of a motivator. Coming out of Afghanistan. The withdrawal. We all felt the pain of that because we've been in a place where tough missions, of course, but where they don't do policy.
If you've deployed as a member of the Armed Services, you felt that in your bones.
We felt that. And it was all in that same time period.
It was a critical time.
All in that same time period. So they're like, I have to do something. There's something, what is wrong? We're pulling apart as our communities get into various squabbles, or we're not speaking a language of teamwork, which is a common teamwork language, is what veterans understand. They understand leadership, service, and teamwork. They just do. Leadership in the military every day is another day to either become the next grade or move into the next position. So they understand basic principles of leadership. When there's problems, the leader's there. When there's action that is needed to take, and send me. Mm-hmm. And it's not common, it's not 100%, but it's enough in the bones that it's clearly understandable. So you can get pretty close to the heart pretty quickly with other veterans in a common problem. They're problem solvers by nature. You'll find them in the community as coaches and working with the churches and teachers and starting businesses. They have frustrations, we all do.
Sure.
But you get a smile when you're next to another veteran. You really do.
Well, it's an amazing, and thank you to you and all the veterans for your service. I have a son-in-law, as we've mentioned before the show, was a sergeant in the Marine Corps. Deeply respect him. My father served in the Air Force in the early 60s. It's woven in through just about every family in this country.
It
is service to a higher calling, a higher good, the Constitution. How do you, I know you all tend towards center-right politics. Is that helpful to be branded in a particular partisan lane when we have such a partisan divide in this country? Well, does it alienate some members of the veteran community?
I'm certain it does, but it's their choice. We really don't say we're Democrats or Republicans. We're veterans.
Okay.
That's who we are. We start from that common experience, realizing the value of teamwork, understanding the principles we fought and served for, and frankly, comfortable speaking to other veterans about things that are important for veterans and their families, the Constitution that we swore to defend, and as well how we protect the nation at home and abroad. You can't really find too many police officers that haven't had an experience somewhere around in family or whatever. And Virginia, with 26 installations, or maybe 27 if you look at how you count them, there's a military community just around the block. So Virginia's a great place, one with its amount of politics that are going on that you know so much about. But every year there's another race. We're looking at what we're doing now in terms of as a 3-year approach, because this year 140 races in the state of Virginia. That's all of the House delegates and all of the senators. Next year we've got a Senate race, a presidential race. That'll no doubt light the whole state up with all of the things that will go on. And the following then, it's Governor Youngkin and that suite of events, and the House again. So there's always a political race in Virginia. And so our goal here in Virginia is to serve well, build our brand, understand what we're about and who we are in this political space. Again, we don't come in as professional politicians at all, but we do come in with a common ethos and an understanding of how we get change. And we say it's through the ballot box. So if you look 3 years out, this year with 140 races, we can touch a lot of different candidates, speak to a lot of different audiences, get veterans involved in what we're doing. It makes it great for a statewide race next year, because we'll have this connected network, which we already have after 3 years, we'll have even more of. And then ultimately, the following year is another state race, House and,
I'm
and,
very
and
familiar with
governor.
the cycle.
Yeah,
It's punishing.
you
but-
are, but we're not.
Oh, I know. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we're so thrilled you decided to come on. The VIP podcast available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. Got to get the plug in.
You got that
Gotta
right.
Get the plug in. But because when I talk to a lot of people who are frustrated
Yes.
with the American political system,
Yeah.
the binary construct, which has been studied in the 2014 study, it's a process called motive attribution asymmetry, where Americans have gotten so deeply divided in their trenches. Our behaviors politically are similar to Palestinians and Israelis. That was almost 10 years ago, before a very divisive candidate came down the escalator in New York City and led the January 6th.
I read your article.
Good. Available to you on Spotify. No, it's not available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. But thank you for reading that. But the depth of the division in the country is such that we are seeing more acts of political violence. And I caution a lot of my friends who are upset, as I said, about politics. You have politics or you have violence. There really is no in between. So constructive engagement in a political process, I think, is one of the healthiest things that veterans can do.
Yeah.
is to forestall what is seemingly a more divisive country.
Yeah.
And I'd speak to that aspect of being
Yeah.
an American veteran who sees the broader world and go, look, it's a very violent world out there. Because of our political system, we don't have this at home, and nor should we continue.
I think there's something in between that politics and violence. It's frustration and indifference. That's what's in the middle. There's so many people that sit there frustrated, not understanding what can I do to make things change? And that's what veterans start from.
Yeah.
They're a get or done, get into it right now. Let me work this problem. What do I need to do? So there's that frustration of what can I do? The indifference is it doesn't matter. It does matter, particularly, and we sell the point because we talk to veterans. We're more likely to pick up the phone and call an Excel spreadsheet at veterans than the robocall, because no one likes those things. But another veteran saying there is a way, the numbers say there's a way, and that's to vote as a group, if you will, and put that 1,000 or 2,000 votes at the margin of a close race, and and it's very effective. And we've already seen it in 3 years of work. So that frustration and indifference is likely a result of education and training, if you will. Just understanding that the numbers are there for veterans to matter in the votes that they can cast, and matter in Virginia in particular because we have so many elections.
Right.
And we can see by the experience of the last several cycles how close the races are. You're certainly in the business of handicapping races and the knowledge that you have politically here in Virginia. From our perspective, we look at, okay, who's working in the same lanes as we are for veterans and their families, protecting the Constitution and securing the nation. We look at that from a perspective, okay, how many veterans are in that precinct that haven't voted in the last election? We can find that out. Mm-hmm. And our regional teams can go out and touch them, call them, say, listen, it matters that if 300 veterans show up in a precinct where the swing is very, very close, even 100 in a precinct.
We just saw that in the recent special election in Virginia Beach, 350 votes.
350 votes, and Kevin Adams, who was
a veteran himself.
A veteran himself, he and his wife as well. It did, but it was a special election which had a very short cycle for education and training and understanding. And quite frankly, there was a huge number of absentee ballot voters who had signed up as a permanent absentee, had the ballot mailed to them on the day one of the early voting for that early election. And they just said, I'll vote again for what I voted last time. And we saw that in the numbers from who voted for Jen Kagan's.
Permanent absentee ballot.
Permanent absentee ballot.
Yeah.
We saw who voted for Jen Kagan's in her winning race.
So you went into the data.
Absolutely. Pulled it back
all out, looked at it and said, oh, this is what we have to do.
It came down to absentee ballots.
Of course it did.
And so that's why we've now this year become more regional in our approach,
right.
More organic at community level, and looking at the races that will particularly be determined by the absentee ballots. And our job from now, or really it was from January until the voting day, is to get into the communities and convince veterans that there's an inclination not to vote early. But frankly, it matters because there's so many things on the day of voting that can prevent you from voting. the numbers are so clear that early voting and absentee voting are moving the point of decision of elections
Much earlier.
much earlier. So you may think you could do everything in the last 6 weeks like we used to with retail voting, get out the vote and
Get out the vote weekend before the
Weekend.
election. Gone.
It's frankly,
That's August now.
it's early. It's very
now.
early. Early voting typically starts 23 September as it did last year. And meanwhile, on day one, if you're a permanent absentee registered, and it's so easy to do.
Right.
On 23 September, you get your ballot. It's already got, because primaries are finished.
Right.
There's the candidates.
If you know who you're going to vote for, just
It's
go
a
vote.
yes, no.
Yeah.
It's a yes, no, and you're done. No one will bother you because
Is there a form you can fill out? Go online
Absolutely,
to fill out the permanent absentee ballot.
absolutely. We have the QR code that's on the literature that we put out in front of people.
Okay.
We were just at some recent events, political debates down in Stafford. We were at a gun show as well earlier than that. We go out where we know we'll find a lot of veterans, and we say, listen, this matters. Your numbers matter, and it matters in these races. Hit it with your phone, QR code, and suddenly you've got everything you need provided by the state to register permanently as a permanent absentee voter. You can do it for annual if you want,
sure.
but why don't I do permanent? And on day one of early voting, that ballot gets mailed to you from the state that says, here's who's running. Your choice is clear. You can vote whoever you wish to vote for. It doesn't come in for a candidate, it comes in for you, the voter. And there's a lot of reasons, and it's 45 days before the race.
Oh, I know.
45 days.
It's early.
So
When you
as you understand, there were a lot of bills that came through the recent assembly, and we found that some won, some didn't, some passed, some didn't. But this will all sort itself at the state level. What's the right period of time? What's the right approach? But I'm telling you, that what we saw in the Jen Kagan's race and the race that Kevin Adams ran, looking back at the absentee number that came in, it was almost exactly the same in the precincts that Jen lost, but won the election because it was a congressional district. But Kevin had to fight through that number because it was an automatic bank of votes that was there.
Right.
And it is so different because everyone thinks we're going to have a good weekend before voting day.
Well, I think there's also been a problem in the certain elements of the Republican Party, in particular, have said we're not going to honor mail-in ballots or absentee ballots because it threw off the election in 2020. Per their thinking and their experience, I don't think it's accurate.
Their experience,
but that's their thinking.
So we have to convince them that the current play, the current game, which is all legal, what the state is running well within the guidelines of the laws of the state, the game's changed.
Right.
And if you're late, you lose. And that's what we're saying. I mean, you've got to get in it now. And so our job, regionally organized.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, one would think that veterans they're trained in the military to be on time.
Yeah, they are. Well, they are.
Is it part? If I'm reading too much into this, just tell me to stop.
No,
it's early. I've been reading all morning, but are they just not inclined as the rest of the population is not inclined, or just have gotten used to it?
No one's gotten used to it.
It's not a habit yet.
It's not a habit, and it's something new, and there's a certain amount of uncertainty as to the sanctity of that vote. And that's really hard to overcome, and I don't discount any other concerns.
So they are worried about the integrity of the ballot?
Absolutely, they are. Absolutely.
That comes up in conversations?
It does come up in conversation, and so that's another place where veterans can be involved in terms of watching, poll watching and helping in the local political sphere. And it's so interesting. You'll see a crowd and you'll talk to people who are either at a cocktail party for a candidate or working as a team around the political space. I say, how many are veterans? And they'll almost remind themselves, well, yeah, I did serve in the Air Force. I was in the Marine Corps.
They are very humble about their service, aren't they?
We all we're doing our duty, doing our job. It's less about, thank you for your service, I appreciate all that, or welcome home for our Vietnam veterans. But thanks for the ability to serve. Yeah. There's great reward in that. And the other thing veterans see right now is a country that's pulling apart, but also a military that seems fractured. It's not getting its numbers in terms of recruiting. It's got a lot of missions on the horizon. Our National Guard in Virginia, for instance, has been extremely busy. They've been deployed of the largest numbers of deployment. They're most home now. God bless these citizen soldiers. I mean, they're doing things in the community, plus they're serving, plus they're deploying. And there's a lot of spouses and a lot of family members in general are worried about What's the next one? We've been through 3. What's our next deployment? And that's wear and tear on the force, who they're glad to do it. They just need a pretty clear path to understand what they're about, how they're going to come home, and whether their jobs are when they return.
It's and having been through that as a family, with a son-in-law who has deployed twice in the Marines, now a sergeant, as I said, and I had a brother-in-law who was he's a Navy captain, retired Navy captain, flew helos in Iraq, and then did a lot of training for the Navy, safety training, and kind of Corpus Christi and Sinatra and those kind of things. You know, as a family, we recognize a different sacrifice and suffering, but there seems to be a disconnect between the veteran and what I would imagine to be a natural next step is their immediate sphere of influence, to get them involved as well. Is that part of your planning?
Well,
as an organization, to
if
get
I
them
understand
involved?
to get
The family and their most immediate.
That's up to we can speak the language of common deployments, common service, and even common military background.
Right.
We can speak that language. Every family enters that civilian life with its own aspirations, its education, schooling, the many moves that you have in the family. I think we approach it simply with appreciation.
Sure.
Appreciation for the sacrifice and the service.
Yeah.
The funds and the wins and the losses. My family's moved 26 times, but that's not an unusual number when you look at serving 36 years. But we understand the service.
I don't think most Americans quite understand how much goes into serving in the military. I mean, there's a lot of great benefits. And I talk to my son-in-law about this a lot because he's married to my daughter, and she's frankly expensive. You know, and so I try to upplay the benefits, long-term benefits of serving in the military, and being quite young, because they don't look at it like, you know, oh, in 20 years I'll be 45 and have a great career ahead of me at the age of 45, because it's a lot. It's a lot, and the movement is part of that sacrifice, and that has to cause disconnects within the communities themselves.
Well,
they're constantly not really forming relationships.
The military is a lot about transitions between where you live, the schools you're in, the next job you take, the next posting you deploy to. There's a lot of transition. It has a lot of, and when you say, how can we help the veterans, understand they do have an enormous number of transitions. Bringing a family to a new school. My children were in 6 different schools, and that's a low number compared to others. But transitions are always underway. You're thinking about where you are and where you're going next.
Right.
What grade you're in and what grade you might be moving to. Is your job going to change out from under you as the military goes through its many organizational changes?
Right.
So the transitions cause a certain amount, just internal stress. Now what on the horizon is, you know, which conflict, which deployment, how long will I go, what will I do when I get there? But from the moment they're in the military, they're in an organization organically and through the leadership channel and the chain of command, frankly, you're well informed generally. You understand, by the way, they have a meter that immediately understands someone who's not really leveling with them.
Right.
But we all have that experience. So we can say, how many times were you there or where were you here?
Sure.
And all of that is a common life in the military. You're out now, you're in a new community, you have a new school, you're in a new business, you're 2 or 3 job changes along. You know, how do I sort out this fractious world that we live in our communities, and we see it getting more so. We come right at them and say, listen, your vote matters. As a block of votes, you can change things through the ballot box. Nothing is dishonorable in doing any of that.
Absolutely not.
So join us.
So and when you organize these veterans around the state and eventually the country, I would imagine because of all the transitions that occur in their life, they're used to that movement mentality and not necessarily adhering and feeling a part of a community until they stay for a while.
That's right. And so
they don't know where the district's lines are, who's my representative.
so much so.
So how do you walk them through that process to get them involved?
Education, this regional teams is to introduce. We have a lot of candidates who want to speak to the groups of veterans that we can rally. So I think it's introduction to the candidates, being a common point of information for veterans who want to know more about how to be involved and who are the candidates in this race. All of that we're building we're a 501c4. We'd love to be a C3 as well, where we can build that background of political knowledge. But it's step at a time. The crawl, walk, run methodology of the military, you know, crawl, walk, run. We're at a slight canter right now. We have, we're in the walk and growing. And so candidates coming and looking to us so they can we can help introduce them to veteran issues and to veterans.
Right.
And then veterans understanding who's running, not just in the national or the state level races, but now the school boards, what they're doing, now the board of supervisors.
So you're getting them involved in all
Yes.
aspects.
Yes, absolutely. We say we are anxious to get veterans to vote, volunteer, and run.
Okay, you want them to be candidates as well?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
When you look at the
Do you
number
do candidate training? Do you try to
we
bring
don't
in-
do that.
Okay.
There are other organizations that do that and do it well. They're state level
for veterans?
for veterans.
Okay, so the resources are there for
The
veterans.
resources that are there. So without trying to be all things to all people and boil the ocean, we want to make sure we're talking to veterans who are frustrated or indifferent and haven't voted regularly. We want to talk to them about why it's important. Because those who are voting are pretty solid.
Sure.
Those who are not are pretty frustrated.
Well, they care about the country. They signed an oath. They
They
went
do.
out and did it.
And the very simple act of voting seems to be so singular and personal, and it is.
But they still don't. They still don't.
Not well, 40%.
lot of them don't.
40%. But we got in
40% don't vote or are low
Do not
propensity-
vote.
Do not have never.
well, have not. But we find it race by race is different.
Sure,
You have a national race, a statewide, or a local. And when we looked at for instance, the numbers with the statewide with Governor Youngkin and Jason Mieres and Winsome Sears, who won, and then the House delegates as well. That year, it was about 40% had not voted or weren't voting. So it was about 56% voter participation until we got involved with our door knocking and our phone calling and our digital media. So we're very proud of turning out 67% in that year's race. And you look at the total in the statewide was 55%. So 67 veterans, 55% everyone else. That's 12% is against a pretty.
And how do veterans vote on the partisan scale? Do they lean a particular way? Have
Well,
you found?
there's generally center right, but it's more demographic, Chris.
Okay, it is more. Democratic.
It's by demographic, and our younger voters certainly have their own choices to make. They may be
But
more.
by and large, you just want them involved in the political
We
process.
want them involved in voting. We want to see. We'd like to have 67% be every veteran, every vote. Every veteran, you fought for this. You understand the importance of it.
Right.
You served away from home or at home, and it's no harder than voting. You can become active as you wish. You can become partisan as you might wish. You can be involved as a candidate in particular and get your hands on the levers that are changing our community and policies.
So, and it's largely just not being aware.
Yes, it's not being aware, not even knowing where to look for it, because in our normal military life,
But now you got a QR code, you can get the ballot sent to you,
Boom.
Boom, you're done. So where do people go to sign up to be a part of your organization?
Well, we have a website, AmericanVeteransVote.com.
Okay, American
Veterans Vote. It's a statement of fact.
Right.
American veterans do vote.
Okay,
It's a call to action.
right.
Put a comma there, American Veterans, vote. And it's a bit of a warning because there's a lot of veterans who have a lot of concerns about things that they like or don't like in their community. They
Right.
see it personally, they see it in perspective of years of living and years of service. And American Veterans Vote, I think, is a block of votes that people need to go for
Well, I think a lot of people want to support veterans anyway.
to begin with.
So having your voice out there saying this is important to veterans,
Yes.
and not necessarily being about, because one of my daughter's clients up in Washington, D.C. is Wounded Warriors Project, and they do great work for
They
veterans.
do.
But not all people associate with veterans as needing that particular service. There's a lot of services that aren't aware, the people aren't aware of what veterans need or what they really want.
Yeah.
And not necessarily for their own self, but what they want for the country.
They're consumers like any others. They are concerned about inflation. They are likely on their 5th or 6th school for their kids, so education is key.
Huge.
Training in transitions. I need to find a new degree, find a new job, get credit for what I've done in the military. Back to those transitions.
Right.
If you're thinking about veterans and understanding where they are with their families and their concerns, make the transitions easier, not harder.
But I think that the centrality of what you're trying to do is get them to continue their service to the country
Yes.
in a political context. And I think a lot of Americans want to support, because we always say, thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. At my daughter's wedding, the Marines were taking bets, Marines who were in the wedding and were there attending, were taking bets how many times people at the wedding would say to them, thank you for your service. and they would see it as sort of something to joke about, and I know they're pushing it away.
Yeah.
But for us, for civilians, it's really important that we say, because we attach to it, like we really mean it. And so to hear veterans say that we're not just about these particular issues that are close to us financially or on a personal level, but they care about the country and the Constitution and defending our interests abroad.
We definitely
those we also want to attach to.
Yes, absolutely. As a Vietnam era, graduated West Point '72. The whole '60s was my brother and my dad were in Vietnam. Seeing my brother return from Vietnam in 1971, and all of that. I was living in Alexandria as a kid, and I went to West Point from there. It is so heartening to see people say, thank you for your service, for the appreciation. It's not something that's sought, it's something appreciated. And to see it with perspective, like all of that, which was very real, that rejection.
Yeah, especially in the early 70s. Brutal time.
It was, and so it's terrific. But two Vietnam veterans, welcome home is better. Because it wasn't a great welcome, let me just tell you.
No. But to have that attachment to what you all believe and we're trained to, look, we care about the Constitution. We are sworn to defend the Constitution, enemies home and abroad, right? Mm-hmm. And to have that as that noble, I don't want to call it a gesture, but reality is something the civilians also want to attach themselves to. So I think your organization has incredible pull to get people to think not just about veterans issues specifically, but also about, American issues writ large. And I
well, Chris, that's why this code of conduct, there's something that says, I will never forget the sacrifices of those who came before me. I will never do anything to bring dishonor to them, my fellow veterans, or their service to the nation. Because it is felt, it is heartfelt. We realize a lot of people sacrifice to put us on whatever pedestal you choose to not be on or be on. And it's important we understand that sacrifice. So this code of conduct is where it starts. We say the voter, though, is a source of our strength, the reason for our existence, and the judge of our success, the voter. Mm-hmm. And that's a slight turn from the way mission is. Mission is success. Right. Succeed with the mission. Now you're a voter. It's the voter who's going to make the decision about how well we, American veterans, vote. This organization is doing its job. And so there are very important things that this helps us center on.
Lastly, I want to focus on this veterans' mental health. I think this is a way to help give them purpose and meaning in life as well, to be constructively engaged in our political process. Real quick, we're going to do what we call rapid fire.
Good.
No pun intended.
I got it.
Favorite book?
Oh, it's called Last Hill.
Okay.
I just read it. It's about the 2nd Ranger Battalion, which I was helped reform after Vietnam. And it's all about their fight in World War II and their final success in the Hurtgen Forest on the Last Hill. It's a wonderful book.
Okay. Favorite movie?
Forrest Gump.
Really?
Oh, it is. I think a Vietnam guy like, era like this.
Sure.
Well, it took a storyline and carried it all the way through from, everything that Forrest did to ultimately, I don't know, the emotional end of that movie. No, I loved it.
Favorite TV show?
I actually like, I don't look a lot of series and things like that. I watch Fox once in a while. I actually like A Good Doctor, if you can believe it.
That's why you'd be surprised when I get people in the seat and they go, "What's your favorite?" And it's like, you're like, "What? How did you get there?" And it's like this delegate from Shenandoah Valley. It's, "What was your favorite TV show growing up?" She goes, "Oh, Love Boat." I'm like, didn't see that coming.
No, The Good Doctor. It tells a good story. It's pretty human.
Sources of information. Where do you get your news?
I read the Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Page to page, the whole thing, every day. I balance that with a pretty broad look at what I watch on TV.
Okay.
And then I check signals with my wife. Keeps me straight.
Nice. Lastly, favorite sport teams?
I loved the Nationals.
Okay, you're a Nats fan.
I am a Nats fan. And I spend some time in Massachusetts, so I was a Patriot fan. And
that's sad.
I had to be.
Well, you chose. In the end, you choose to.
I choose. No, I like the Nats a lot.
Well, that's great. General Bob Wood, American Veterans Vote. I want to get that right. AmericanVeteransVote.com.
That's
sign up, get involved if you're a veteran. If you're not a veteran, you just want to support them. give them a thumbs up when you see them on the street and tell them thank you for your service.
We do say veteran supporters. They're more than welcome.
Okay, so they can join too?
It's veterans and veteran
Well,
supporters.
there we go. Veteran
Veterans
supporters.
and veteran supporters.
Even better.
Yeah, back to what you were saying about that feel of the American people towards their veterans.
That's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the VIP podcast, available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. Please subscribe, like, and share, and join us next time. Thank you.